The salvage ship Star Seeker drifted silently through the debris field at the edge of the Orion Arm. Its powerful scanning beams cut through the darkness of space, searching for anything of value among the ancient wreckage. The ship's alien crew had been mapping this sector for 3 standard weeks, finding nothing but twisted metal and frozen rock. "Another worthless zone," Tom muttered, his 4-fingered hand adjusting the scanner sensitivity. As the lead engineer of the salvage crew, he had hoped to find at least one valuable piece of technology. His gray skin reflected the soft blue light of the control panel as he prepared to recommend moving to another sector. That's when the primary scanner lit up with an alert. "Captain Ross, you need to see this," Tom called out, his inner eyelids blinking rapidly in excitement. The scanner had detected something massive. A complete ship structure almost 4 kilometers away. The captain's heavy footsteps approached the console. Ross was a veteran of the salvage trade, his thick protective scales showing signs of age and experience. "Show me," he ordered, leaning forward to study the readings. The main screen displayed a massive silhouette floating in the void. As they approached, the ship's external lights revealed a sight that made the entire bridge crew fall silent. It was a warship, but unlike anything in their database. Its hull was dark gray, bearing the scars of ancient battles, yet remained largely intact. Most striking were the massive weapon ports along its sides, now sealed and silent. "Magnification times 10, Ross commanded. The image zoomed in, revealing faded markings on the hull. Tom's translation software worked quickly. "U.S. Thunder," he read aloud and laughed. "It's human-made. Look at those primitive armor plates and those outdated weapon systems. This must be from their first interstellar war era." Ross stroked his chin thoughtfully. "The first-generation wars. That would make this ship over 300 years old." He paused, studying the vessel with growing interest. "I've heard stories about their warships from that era, particularly one called the Thunder." Tom snorted dismissively. "Stories? Captain, look at it. The design is completely obsolete. Those armor plates are physical metal. No energy shielding. The weapon ports are designed for kinetic projectiles. It's practically a museum piece." "Run a full scan," Ross ordered, ignoring Tom's derision. "Let's see what's inside this relic." The scanning beams swept across the ancient warship. Data began flowing across their screens, revealing the ship's massive internal structure. Power readings were minimal, just enough to maintain basic system integrity. The hull, despite its age, showed remarkable durability. "Interesting," Ross mumbled, examining the readings. "The internal layout is unlike anything I've seen. Look at these reinforced bulkheads, the redundant power systems." "Primitive redundancy," Tom interrupted. "They had to build everything twice because their technology wasn't reliable. Modern ships don't need such wasteful design." As they continued their scan, they discovered something unexpected. A sealed compartment in what appeared to be the medical bay. The readings were faint, but unmistakable. "Captain," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting a preserved biosignal. Something's still alive in there." The bridge fell silent. Ross straightened up, his expression serious. "Contact Corporate Command. Tell them we found something significant. This isn't just salvage anymore. This is a historical discovery." Tom shook his head as he prepared the towing beams. "Historical junk, you mean? The only value this relic has is in a museum, showing how far superior our technology has become." As the salvage crew began their work, none of them noticed a subtle change in the ancient warship. Deep within its hull, in systems their scans couldn't penetrate, something stirred. A faint pulse of energy, barely detectable, rippled through the ship's core. The U.S. Thunder might have appeared dead, but appearances can be deceiving. The salvage crew's laughter echoed through their comm system as they prepared to tow their prize home. They had no idea that this relic would soon teach them a lesson about underestimating human ingenuity. The news of the U.S. Thunder's discovery spread quickly through the corporate channels. Within hours, a sleek command ship arrived at the salvage site, its polished hull gleaming in stark contrast to the ancient human warship. On board, corporate executive Reed watched through the observation deck's massive window as tug ships carefully maneuvered around the Thunder. "Such a crude design," Reed said, his thin lips curling into a smile. His assistant, Mark, stood beside him, taking notes on a holographic pad. "But it will make an excellent addition to our historical collection." Below them, Tom and his engineering team had already started their initial survey of the Thunder's hull. Their magnetic boots clanked against the old metal as they walked across the surface, taking readings and placing marker beacons. "The armor is remarkably thick," Tom reported through the comm system. "Must have been compensating for their lack of shield technology. What a waste of materials." Reed nodded, unsurprised. "Pull up the historical records on this ship class," he ordered Mark. The assistant's fingers danced across his pad, and a holographic display filled the air between them. Text and images scrolled past, showing battle records from the first-generation wars. According to these records, Mark Reed, the U.S. Thunder was credited with turning the tide in several major battles. It reportedly survived encounters that destroyed newer ships, and he paused, frowning. "This can't be right." It claims the Thunder single-handedly defeated 3 enemy dreadnoughts at the Battle of Proxima. Reed laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Human propaganda, nothing more. Look at it. Those weapon systems couldn't possibly match 1 modern dreadnought, let alone 3. Our smallest corvette has more firepower than this entire ship." A new voice crackled over the comm system. "Executive Reed, you need to see this. We found something in the medical bay." Minutes later, Reed stood before a sealed cryopod, its ancient systems still humming quietly. Ice crystals covered the small window, making it impossible to see inside clearly. But the bio readings were unmistakable. Someone was alive in there. "The pod systems are integrated with the ship's core computers," Tom explained, running a scanner over the sealed unit. "We can't open it without powering up major sections of the ship." Reed studied the pod thoughtfully. The historical value just doubled. Imagine, a living crew member from the first-generation wars. He turned to his assistant. "Mark, prepare the paperwork. I'm claiming this entire find under Historical Preservation Act 47B. We'll tow it back to our research facility in the Centauri system." "Sir," one of the junior engineers interrupted, "I've been analyzing these power readings. There's something strange about them. The ship's systems seem to be primitive, obsolete." "Of course they are," Reed cut him off. "Just make sure those tow cables are secure. I don't want any damage to my new museum piece." As the corporate team discussed transportation plans, no one noticed the subtle changes happening throughout the Thunder. Each scan they performed, each system they analyzed, sent tiny pulses of energy through the ship's dormant circuits. In the darkness of its vast corridors, emergency lights began to flicker dimly. Tom was attaching the last tow cable when his scanner picked up an energy spike. But when he checked again, everything appeared normal. He shrugged it off. Old ships often had random power fluctuations in their dying systems. "All cables secured," he reported, "ready to begin tow sequence." Reed watched with satisfaction as the tug ships took position around the Thunder. "Send a message to corporate headquarters," he told Mark. "Tell them we found a perfect example of humanity's quaint early attempts at space warfare. The museum visitors will love it." As the tow ships fired up their engines, the Thunder floated silently in space. If anyone had been watching very carefully, they might have noticed that the ice crystals on the cryopod's window had started to melt, ever so slightly. Inside, barely visible through the clearing frost, a human hand twitched. The salvage fleet began its long journey to the Centauri system, dragging their ancient prize behind them. They were so focused on what they thought they knew about the old warship that they forgot one of the most important lessons in history. Appearances can be deceiving, especially when it comes to human ingenuity. The convoy was halfway to the Centauri system when the alarm started blaring. On the bridge of the command ship, Executive Reed jolted awake in his luxury chair. Red warning lights flashed across every screen. "Report," he shouted, watching as his crew scrambled to their stations. The sensor officer's voice shook slightly. "Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, sir. Raider signatures." Everyone on the bridge froze. The Raiders were infamous throughout the galaxy. Pirates who used stolen military technology to prey on civilian ships. Their attacks were brutal, leaving no survivors. Through the main viewport, Reed watched as 5 sleek black ships materialized from hyperspace. Their weapon ports were already open, energy weapons glowing with deadly purpose. "How many escort ships do we have?" Reed demanded. 2 corvettes and the tugs," Mark replied, his skin pale with fear. "Our weapons are mostly ceremonial. We're a corporate fleet, not a battle group." The main screen crackled to life, showing a scared face with cybernetic implants. The Raider captain grinned, showing metal-plated teeth. "Well, what do we have here?" The Raider's voice boomed through the speakers. "A corporate convoy, far from home." "And what's this?" His eyes fixed on the thunder being towed behind them. "Bringing some scrap metal home." Reed tried to keep his voice steady. "This is a corporate research vessel under Historical Preservation Act 47B. Any interference will bring the full force of—" The Raider's laugh cut him off. "The nearest patrol fleet is 3 days away. Now power down your ships and prepare to be boarded. If you cooperate, we might let some of you live as slaves." Tom's voice came through the internal comm from the engineering bay. "Sir, we could try to run. Our tugs are civilian grade, but they're fast. And abandon the thunder. Do you know how much corporate money is invested in this find?" Reed snapped back. The Raider captain was getting impatient. "You have 5 minutes to surrender. After that, we start shooting. And trust me, your little escort ships won't last 5 seconds against our weapons." In the command ship's engineering section, Tom frantically worked at his console, trying to find options. That's when he noticed something odd on his readings. The Thunder's power signature had changed. "Captain Ross," he called to the salvage ship's commander, who was coordinating with the tugs. "The Thunder. Something's happening." Ross rushed to Tom's station. The readings from the ancient warship were fluctuating wildly. Deep in its hull, systems that had appeared dead were drawing power. 4 minutes. The Raider's voice boomed through the ship. Reed paced on his bridge, watching the Raider ships take up attack positions around them. Their weapons could tear through civilian-grade shields like paper. The 2 escort corvettes bravely moved to defensive positions, but everyone knew they stood no chance. 3 minutes. In the Thunder's medical bay, unnoticed by everyone, the cryopod systems had fully activated. The ice was gone from the window now, revealing the face of a man inside. His eyes were moving rapidly under closed lids. 2 minutes. Tom's scanner suddenly lit up with alerts. "Sir, the Thunder's reactor. It's powering up. But that's impossible. We checked those systems. They were dead." Through the viewport, they could see a faint glow starting to emanate from the Thunder's engine section. Lights began flickering on across its hull, systems awakening one by one. 1 minute. The cryopod seal broke with a hiss. Inside, the man's eyes snapped open. 30 seconds. The Raider captain showed his metal teeth again. "I hope you've made your peace with whatever gods you believe in." Suddenly, every screen on every ship lit up with an unexpected signal. A voice, rough from centuries of sleep, but filled with unmistakable authority, spoke through their comm systems. "This is Captain James of the U.S. Thunder to all ships in range. I suggest you withdraw immediately." There was a pause, followed by the sound of ancient but powerful systems roaring to life. "I would hate to damage your pretty ships just because you forgot to read your history books." The Raiders were about to learn why the Thunder was legendary. And this time, No one was laughing. Captain James stepped out of the cryopod, his movements careful but precise. 300 years of sleep had left him stiff, but the pod's preservation systems had done their job well. He looked around the medical bay, taking in the layer of dust that covered everything. In the command ship, Reed and his crew stared at their screens in disbelief. "Impossible," Tom whispered, watching the life signs from the Thunder's medical bay. No one could survive in cryo-sleep that long. Their technology wasn't advanced enough. The raiders seemed equally confused. Their captain's confident grin had faded slightly. "Who is this?" Some kind of joke. His voice boomed through the comm. "You have 10 seconds to surrender before we open fire." Captain James ignored the threat, his fingers dancing across the medical bay's ancient control panel. Dust fell away as hidden screens lit up, displaying ship diagnostics that only he could understand. "Thunder," he spoke clearly. "Command authorization. James Alexander P. Captain. Serial number 47,729 Alpha." The ship's systems responded immediately. Lights flickered on throughout the massive vessel, and a soft hum began building in its walls. A gentle female voice spoke from hidden speakers. Voice print confirmed. "Welcome back, Captain." On the command ship's bridge, Reed watched in amazement as system after system came online in the ancient warship. "Get me a channel to that ship," he ordered. Before his crew could respond, all their screens changed. Captain James's face appeared, looking remarkably alive for someone who had been frozen for 3 centuries. His gray hair was cut military short, and his eyes held a sharp intelligence that made even Reed take a step back. "I assume I have you to thank for finding my ship," James said calmly, "though I have to question your towing methods. Those cables are stressing the outer hull plates." Tom couldn't help himself. But your ship is obsolete. Those hull plates are just metal. They can't possibly." James smiled, but there was steel in his expression. "Son, did you ever wonder why humanity used such primitive materials? Why we built things the way we did?" He shook his head. "Never mind. We have more pressing matters." The raider captain's patience had run out. "Enough of this nonsense. All ships target their engines. We'll sell whatever survives for scrap." "I really wouldn't do that," James said, still eerily calm. He turned to look at something off-screen. "Thunder, initiate defense protocols. Show them what obsolete looks like." The ancient warship's response was immediate. Armor plates that had appeared solid began shifting, revealing weapon ports that had been completely hidden from scans. The primitive hull rippled as layers of advanced technology awakened beneath its surface. That's impossible," Tom stammered, staring at his readings. "The power levels, they're higher than anything in our database." The raider ships fired their first volley. Energy beams that could tear through modern shields streaked toward the Thunder. But instead of the expected destruction, something remarkable happened. The shots hit the Thunder's hull and simply vanished. No explosion, no damage, not even a scorch mark. "Interesting weapon design," James commented, examining a readout. "But a bit predictable. You see, 300 years ago, humanity learned something important about warfare." His expression hardened. "Never show your enemy everything you can do." Reed found his voice at last. "Captain James, I don't understand. All our records show the Thunder was just an early warship. Nothing special." "Of course they do." James smiled again. "That was the point. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to have a discussion with our raider friends about manners and history lessons." The Thunder's true weapons were powering up now, systems that had been carefully hidden for centuries coming to life. The raiders were about to learn that humanity's primitive technology wasn't primitive at all. It was just very, very patient. The Thunder's engine room hummed with power as Captain James walked through its massive doors. His boots left footprints in the dust, but the machinery around him was coming alive, clean, and perfect as the day it was built. "Status report," he ordered, reaching the central control panel. The ship's AI responded smoothly. All systems awakening from dormancy. Power levels at 40% and rising. Hull integrity at 100%. Weapon systems beginning warm-up sequence. On the raider ships, panic was starting to spread. Their sensors showed power readings that shouldn't have been possible from such an old vessel. The raider captain's cybernetic eye glowed red with rage. What trickery is this? He snarled through the comm. No human ship from that era could have this much power. James touched another panel, and massive screens lit up around him. They showed the Thunder's true design specs, layers of technology that had been carefully hidden beneath its primitive exterior. You see, James spoke while working. Humans have always been good at making others underestimate us. The Thunder wasn't just a warship, it was an experiment. In engineering, Tom watched his readings with growing amazement. The Thunder's reactor wasn't the simple fusion drive they had detected earlier. It was something far more advanced, something that even modern ships couldn't match. The armor, Tom whispered, finally understanding. It's not just metal. It's quantum-locked alloy. James finished for him. With molecular binding that adapts to energy weapons, the more power you hit it with, the stronger it becomes. He smiled. We just made it look like simple metal. The raiders fired another volley, more powerful than the first. The shots disappeared into the Thunder's hull again. But this time something was different. The ship's armor began to glow with a soft blue light. "Thank you for the power donation," James said calmly. "Thunder, show them what we can do with that energy." The Thunder's response was magnificent. Its entire hull began to transform. Plates shifted and moved, revealing rows of weapon systems that had been completely hidden. But these weren't the primitive railguns everyone had expected. Quantum cascade batteries online, the ship's AI announced. Plasma fusion cannons charging. Shield harmonics adjusting to local space-time conditions. Reed watched from the command ship, his mouth open in shock. Those weapons, they're more advanced than anything we have now. How is this possible? Simple, James replied, his hands dancing across control panels. Humanity learned long ago that looking weak was sometimes the best defense. We built the Thunder to be underestimated. Every scan, every analysis was designed to show exactly what others expected to see, an obsolete warship from a primitive age. The Thunder's engines pulsed with blue fire as it easily broke free from the tow cables. The massive ship moved with impossible grace, its systems now fully awake. What you're seeing, James continued, is 300 years of human ingenuity wrapped in a package that nobody would look at twice. We hid our best technology in plain sight, knowing that someday it would be needed again. The raider ships began to back away, their sensors showing weapon power levels that terrified them. But the Thunder was fully awake now, and it had no intention of letting them escape. "Final warning," James announced, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Surrender now, or learn why the Thunder's name was feared even when people thought it was primitive." The raiders' only response was to charge their weapons to maximum power. Their captain's pride wouldn't let him back down, even as his crew began to realize their terrible mistake. James shook his head sadly. They never learn. Thunder, battle stations. Let's remind them why humanity survived the first-generation wars. The ancient warship's response shook space itself. Every hidden weapon powered up. Every advanced system revealed itself, and the raiders finally understood their error. They had mistaken patience for weakness and age for obsolescence. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Space lit up with fire as the raiders launched their first full attack. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward the Thunder, enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. On the command ship, Reed and his crew covered their eyes, expecting to see the ancient vessel torn apart. Instead, they heard Captain James's calm voice. "Thunder, activate the mirror shield." The space around the Thunder rippled like water. Every enemy shot hit an invisible barrier and bounced back toward the raider ships. Two of the raiders barely managed to dodge their own weapons. "Impossible," the raider captain roared. No shield technology can do that. Modern shields can't, James agreed. But we learned a few tricks in the old days. His fingers moved across the control panel. Thunder, show them what real weapons look like. The Thunder's response was devastating. Hidden ports along its hull opened, revealing rows of what looked like simple metal tubes. The raiders laughed at what they thought were primitive projectile weapons. They stopped laughing when the tubes fired. Instead of normal shells, they launched streams of quantum-locked particles. The raiders' advanced shields might as well have been paper. The particles passed right through them, shorting out power systems and weapons with surgical precision. First rule of space combat, James announced as two raider ships went dark, drifting helplessly. Never assume you know everything about your enemy's capabilities. The raider captain screamed orders to his remaining ships. They spread out, trying to surround the Thunder. Their sensors were useless now. Every scan showed something different, as if the ancient ship kept changing its very nature. Second rule, James continued, watching the raiders maneuver. Never try to outthink a ship that's had 300 years to plan for this moment. The Thunder's main weapons powered up, but instead of firing forward, the energy coursed through the ship's hull in strange patterns. The space around the Thunder began to twist. What's happening? Tom asked, staring at his readings in engineering. The energy patterns. They're like nothing I've ever seen. His answer came in the form of a spectacular light show. The Thunder created what looked like tears in space itself, small portals that opened behind each raider ship. Before they could react, energy beams shot through these portals, hitting them from behind where their shields were weakest. Third rule of combat, James said as another raider ship lost power. Position doesn't matter if you can bend space itself. The raider captain's flagship was the only ship still fighting now. It launched everything it had. Experimental weapons, forbidden technology, even suicide drones. The Thunder weathered it all, its primitive hull absorbing or reflecting every attack. Then the ancient warship demonstrated its final trick. Its entire hull began to glow with collected energy from all the raiders' attacks. The power readings went off every scale Tom had. And the final rule of combat, James said softly, never waste your enemy's gifts. The Thunder released all the absorbed energy in a single focused burst. The beam wasn't particularly large or flashy. It simply touched the raider flagship's hull, and everything stopped. The ship hung in space, frozen in time, its atoms locked in a quantum stasis field. What did you do to them? Reed asked, his voice shaking. Gave them time to think about their choices, James replied. They'll unfreeze in about an hour, hopefully wiser. The battle was over. 4 raider ships drifted powerless in space, their crews alive but thoroughly defeated. The flagship hung silent, its crew experiencing an hour of frozen time in what would feel like an instant to them. The Thunder's weapons powered down, its hull returning to its deceptively simple appearance. Looking at it now, no one would guess what it was truly capable of. Now then, James said, turning to the corporate ships. I believe we need to have a discussion about historical artifacts and assumptions about primitive technology. No one laughed at the Thunder after that day. Some things, they learned, only look old because they've had time to perfect what they do. 1 month after the battle, the Thunder sat in a special dock at the Centauri Research Station, but it wasn't being treated as a museum piece anymore. Engineers and scientists from across the galaxy came to study it, though most of its secrets remained safely hidden within its hull. Captain James stood at a viewing window with Reed and Tom, watching teams of workers carefully restore the Thunder's outer hull to its original appearance. I still don't understand, Tom said, shaking his head. Why hide such advanced technology behind a primitive exterior? You could have shown everyone humanity's true power. James smiled, his reflection clear in the reinforced glass. Sometimes, the best way to keep peace is to let others think they're ahead of you. The Thunder wasn't just a warship, it was a message in a bottle, sent forward in time. Reed nodded slowly, finally understanding. A reminder that appearances can be deceiving, that we shouldn't judge others based on our assumptions about their technology. Exactly, James replied. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way in our early days of space travel. Many species thought we were primitive because we used different approaches to technology. They underestimated us, attacked us, and learned too late that different doesn't mean inferior. Below them, a group of alien children pressed their faces against another window, staring in awe at the massive ship. Their teacher explained how the Thunder had single-handedly defeated a raider fleet. The story had spread quickly across the galaxy. The raider captain sent a message yesterday. Reed mentioned. He's requesting permission to come study the Thunder properly this time. Says he wants to learn, not fight. James laughed softly. Approve it. That's exactly what we hoped for. Turning enemies into students, fear into understanding. Tom looked embarrassed. I should apologize for how I treated your ship, Captain. I was arrogant, thought our modern technology made us superior. No need to apologize, James said. You reacted exactly as we expected. That's why the Thunder worked so perfectly. Everyone saw what they wanted to see. An outdated relic that posed no threat. A small ship passed by their window, its crew taking pictures of the Thunder. News of the battle had changed how people viewed human technology. Now they looked at even the simplest human devices with new respect, wondering what hidden capabilities they might possess. What happens now? Reed asked. The Thunder's secret is out. James turned from the window, his expression serious. Not all of its secrets. What you saw was just a fraction of what the Thunder can do. Remember, it was designed to be underestimated. Even now, it's still hiding most of its capabilities. This revelation made both aliens stare at the ship with new wonder. If what they'd seen wasn't its full power, what else could it do? The Thunder will remain here, James continued, as a reminder and a warning. A reminder that progress doesn't always look like we expect, and a warning about the danger of technological arrogance. As if responding to its captain's words, the Thunder's hull gleamed in the station's lights. To most observers, it still looked like an old warship, wearing its battle scars with dignity. But now everyone knew that beneath that humble exterior lay technology that could reshape space itself. One last question, Tom said hesitantly. Are there more ships like the Thunder out there? James just smiled mysteriously. Look around you. Humanity has spread across hundreds of worlds. We build simple homes, use basic-looking tools, and fly ships that many consider outdated. What do you think? The implications of his words sent a shiver through both aliens. Every human device, every piece of technology, no matter how simple it appeared, might be hiding incredible secrets. The Thunder had taught the galaxy a valuable lesson. Never judge a civilization by your own standards of progress. Because sometimes the most advanced technology is the kind that doesn't need to show off. After all, true power lies not in what you show, but in what you keep hidden.